Welcome back everybody to Cooking Healthy with Chef Gilou. So today I have a special guest, Chef Zach Kessigh. I invite him because Zach does a lot of foraging, and so I thought that was very aligned with wild food philosophy. So I'm going to pass you on to Zach.
So my name is Chef Zach Kessigh, and I'm First Nations Ojibwe, and I'm the chef and owner of Nagan. So Nagan means dish in Ojibwe, and what we do there is we do a 9-course tasting menu of progressive Aboriginal cuisine. And what we do is we're getting back to the land, so we use things that we've either grown, we've foraged, or things that we can't do with that, we source locally from trusted suppliers. So we get our pork from a farm around here, we get our fish straight from Georgian Bay from different sort of fishermen, and we showcase that in our tasting menu.
Right. So what are you going to cook today?
So the dish I'm going to cook today has a lot of, this is a dish that I would showcase on my tasting menu. This would be part of a fish course that I would normally serve, but we're using a lot of products that are straight from Gilles' garden here. So we have some kale, we have some arugula, we have some edible flowers, a bunch of herbs, and pardon?
I can't find you.
Oh. But then I'm gonna make a cucumber rose that's gonna be garnished with some radish from the garden, and then a bunch of little herbs.
I'm going to show it.
Yep.
So I'm going to show you to make one of those. Look how
Little-
beautiful that is.
Little cucumber rose. And then what's gonna go with it is we got some rainbow trout here that we're gonna dress with some herbs from the garden. So we have some lemon balm, we have some chervil, and then we have some dried, what is this again, Joe?
What is that?
Tarragon.
We have some dried tarragon that I'm gonna put on there. So all these things that we're using today works well with fish. So the lemon balm works well with fish. The chervil works well. The tarragon works well. It has that anise sort of black licorice flavor that works really well. And the technique that I'm going to show you can work for any sort of fish. It doesn't have to be just rainbow trout. You can use salmon. You could use whitefish. You could use any sort of fish that you want. The herbs that we're going to use are herbs that we've gotten from the garden. I try to use natural herbs as much as possible. So we can get lemon flavors from the garden. We can get wild lemon flavors from the wild. Instead of going to the grocery store and buying lemons, we can find these things, or we can grow these things. I don't like using lemons because they've been shipped from California. You know what I mean? So we can find things in the garden that taste like lemon, and we can find things in the wild that taste like lemon. And then inside the vinaigrette, we're gonna make a vinaigrette with all the herbs that we have from the garden and some morels that I went and foraged in the springtime, and then we've just pickled so that we can keep them and use them later on in the season. The season's so short for morels; we only have a 2-week span. So instead, you can either dry them or you can pickle them like this and use them for later use. So we do that just so we can keep them and use them for later on.
Sure. What's good?
Ask anybody if they can see.
Can
the
anybody
area.
see us? I don't see anybody commenting.
Are there any numbers?
says
There's
we're
one
live.
person. No.
Everybody's logged off.
It's not coming up. Well, it's okay. We carry on do the video and then I'll post it later.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to get started is I'm going to get started with the vinaigrette and then the cucumber rose, because this fish is only maybe an inch thick. It's not going to take very long to cook in the oven, because we're going to wrap it in parchment paper and then finish it in the oven. It's sort of an old French technique that's called un papillote, but this is a little bit different. We're not going to make the moon shape. We're just going to wrap it and steam it until, I like my fish about medium almost. I like to be a little pink. So in our vinaigrette here, I'm going to be putting,
I'm seeing people now.
we're going to make a vinaigrette with apple cider vinegar. You can make this vinaigrette with any sort of vinegar that you want. I like to use apple cider vinegar. In the restaurant, we make our own vinegars. We use our own apple cider vinegar, but this will work for this. And then it's basically a vinaigrette a basic vinaigrette we're going to make. So there's vinegar, there's a bit of Dijon mustard, and then we're going to use the saffron oil. And then what we're going to do, instead of using white sugar, we're going to sweeten the vinaigrette with maple syrup that Jill has harvested and gotten from one of his friends here. So we're going to get started on the vinaigrette here. So a basic vinaigrette is 1 part vinegar to 3 parts oil. I've been doing this quite a bit of time now that I can do this to taste and sort of eyeball things.
Yeah, we don't measure usually.
No, when you've been doing it for so long. So I've just added some of the vinegar. I'm gonna add a little teaspoon of the Dijon mustard. And if you wanted to, you could use the grainy mustard. All we're trying to do is make an emulsion. So when you're making a vinaigrette, you need to have that mustard to bind the oil and bind the vinegar together. So now I've got the vinegar and I've got the mustard in here. I'm just gonna give this a whisk. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get Jill here to pour in the oil just really nice and slowly until we start to create a nice emulsion. And we don't want this to be very thin. We want it to be thick like a vinaigrette, like a nice vinegar. This will be a nice, really summery dish. We got the acid from the vinegar, the acid from the herbs. We always acid always goes nice with fish. Like if you think when you're making fish at home, you'll use lemon, you'll use lime.
So in a comment, if you like to share what me as a kid, I used to go forage blackberries and mushrooms. I'd just be curious to see if any of you they went and forage for mushroom or berries or.
Yeah, so in the springtime, that's a big part of my menu is going foraging for natural things. In the springtime, we get morels, we get pheasantback mushrooms, we get lots of wild herbs, we get the wild leeks, we get fiddleheads. As the season As the season progresses, the foraging kind of dies down, but there's always things in different parts of the season. Yeah, that's good there. So springtime is a big part. Springtime is where we get most of our foraging things from. And then as the season goes on, there's still things that you can forage. So around this time, you can still go out. You can get lion's mane mushrooms. Puffballs are starting to come into season. So I'm just going to season the vinaigrette. There's some salt there. So I can put some cracked pepper.
And then, so for the one of you who are doing wild fit and are in spring, then you wouldn't put the maple syrup. But then, if you're in the fall season of the wild fit challenge, then you can use some maple syrup.
Yeah, or a substitute for this is you can use honey as well. I don't like to use white sugar. Naturally, in culinary school, when we made vinaigrettes, we would use white sugar to make this. But I try to cut out the white sugar as much as possible. So you can use maple syrup, you can use honey, and those things work the best. So I'm going to sweeten this to taste now. And what I mean by the taste is I'm going to put a bit of maple syrup in it, and then I'm going to taste it to make sure that the vinegar and the maple syrup sort of balanced out. So it needs a lot more maple.
Okay, so mushroom, raspberry, blueberries, blackberries. Yeah, we used to get buckets of blackberries. My mom would make jam. There was enough jam for the whole winter.
Yeah, we just last week we just went and picked a whole bunch of elderberries. We spent our morning out foraging little wild elderberries to use in our menus, and the elderberries go nice, so we make sorbets out of them. We were making pâte de fruit for our petit four course, or they would even go nice with something like squab or anything you wanted to throw in a jus. So that's our basic vinaigrette that we've made. All it is that it's the apple cider, which you can use any sort of vinegar you want, a bit of mustard, the oil until we got a nice emulsification there, and then we just sweetened it with the maple syrup. So now all I'm going to do to make this, I want this to be sort of a vegetable vinaigrette with all the nice produce that Gilles has. So we've got kale that he has in his garden here. We've just picked it off the stems because the stems are quite woody. So we just got the greens here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to do I'm going to get Jill to do it. It's a nice chiffonade cut. So a chiffonade is all we're doing is we're just rolling it up and we're just making sure we got nice thin strips that we're going to add into the vinaigrette here. And then also to the vinaigrette. So this is something that we just can just toss it all in together. It'll make like a nice chunky vinaigrette. So I'm going to throw in some of those pickled morels that I have.
So can you tell, how do you pickle morels?
So, like I said before, the season for morels is very short. It's about 2 weeks. This summer on the property where the dining room is and where I teach, I was looking for morels for about 2 weeks back in the woods. And then I went and I had lunch one day. Yeah, right into the vinaigrette. I went and had lunch one day and I came out of the house and they were all around the trees, all around the property there. So I spent about 2 weeks looking for, or finding the morels there. So with the morels, all I did was clean them. I soaked them in a bit of salt water because sometimes up inside the actual morel itself, there's a bit of potato bugs or bugs in there. So what the salt will do is it'll draw out the moisture and then it'll draw out some of the dirt that's in there. So you see our vinaigrette's starting to look nice and chunky there. So I got the kale that Jill put in there. We got our pickled morels. I got some nice fava beans that we harvested right outside outside his house here. And you can eat these raw. They got a nice sweet flavor. I like to serve them raw. We're just gonna put them right into the vinaigrette as well. And you see how we start to get a nice chunky sort of vinaigrette going.
Can some of this shop too?
Yeah, and then we can tear just some of the, and then we're gonna tear just some of the arugula to put inside of the vinaigrette as well.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Vegetable vinaigrette. I'm never had that, so I'm looking forward to try it. One more, that's good.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, that's good then. And now because we've added a bit more things to this, I'm just gonna check for a bit of a seasoning. Because usually when we add stuff, we re-season again. We'll add a bit more salt, add a bit more pepper, so that at the end of this, like the end of the vinaigrette, we should have a well-seasoned, sort of well-balanced vinaigrette here. Gonna check the seasoning one more time. So I can taste the vinegar, I can taste the maple syrup. I think it needs a bit more salt. And just a bit more black pepper. And if you wanted to, you could add fresh peas to this. You could add any herbs you want. Like you can make 1,000 different versions of this base that I just showed you.
I have some peas in the garden.
Yeah.
In the fridge.
Yeah, you can use some peas if you wanted to. So that's our vinaigrette. So this is going to be basically our sauce that we're going to be doing for the fish and for the little cucumber roes that we have here. So just vinaigrettes make things a lot lighter. Instead of like the classical ways, what we would do is we would make sort of like a cream sauce and put a cream sauce with fish. Where this makes it a lot lighter, a lot fresher, and it just screams sort of fall, summer almost, last of the fresh produce. So I'm just gonna put my vinaigrette to the side. Now that our vinaigrette's done.
Sounds good.
Smells good.
Now so,
Bruno's here. Bruno.
and now so the next thing that I'm gonna do
Hey Bruno.
is we're gonna start working on our fish.
Put it there.
Yep. Jill's gonna put the fish there. And so this is sort of it's not really a classical version of a papillote. We're just gonna roll it up because I want it to steam still. When this cooks, it's gonna separate from the skin, and then we're gonna be able to portion the fish nicely how we want. So if we wanted to, in the menu, what I would do is we would get sort of 4 nice portions out of this. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use some of that tarragon that's from the garden. And Jill dried this last year, so it's nice. It's still nice and fragrant. Like it was nice and it's been dried. We pulverized it in a bit of a coffee grinder. And we want to make sure this is well seasoned too. Like we want to be able. There's no point in adding things to the fish or anything like that if we can't taste it. So we want to make sure just things are well seasoned. There's a tarragon. Yeah, and I'm going to season this. Let's go with this.
Oh, it's really good.
I'm going to season this with some black pepper.
And the fleur de sel.
We can finish it with fleur de sel if we wanted to.
So what did people say they were foraging? I didn't get to see you.
Blackberries.
Blackberries? Mostly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So puffballs and own sound are about to come into season. So I'm gonna be going out this afternoon to look for some herbs. So Jill, if you want to, you can just find one, not too fine, but finely chop that if you like, and then put it on top of the fish.
So we got some meliss and chervil.
Lemon balm.
Lemon balm and chervil.
So basically what we're doing is we're making sort of like a nice crust for the fish. So once again, lemon balm goes nice with fish. The chervil goes nice for fish. Yeah, just put it right over it. And what we're doing is we're reiterating that sort of that black licorice flavor with chervil, because chervil has a bit of a black licorice flavor as well.
There, see, nice generous amount. Alright.
So it looks good. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this just a bit closer to the edge here. And then I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm not really doing it in papilla. That's why this is a bit of a, it's a bit of a washed version of it. But we have the same sort of, it's gonna do the exact same thing. We want it to sort of steam on the inside. And then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna fold it over this way. Make sure it's nice and tight. So you see how I folded it over, and then what I'm doing is I'm bringing the corners in here. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm bringing the edges in close to the fish again, and then I'm gonna roll it over again, a bit tighter.
Then all the aroma gets trapped inside.
So then now what I'm going to do is Jill's got the oven preheated at 350, and we're going to cook this for maybe 10 minutes or so. I like my fish medium. I don't really like it. I don't like it well done because I think it's overcooked and it sort of ruins the texture. So I'm going to cook it for about 10 minutes. We'll check it on in about 10 minutes.
When I was an apprentice back in France, I did my first 2 years in a restaurant that mostly served fish. And the chef always used to say, never overcook your fish. It will only taste better if you just slightly undercook your fish.
Well, we get so much nice fish around here. Like we have Georgian Bay right around here where we get whitefish, we get salmon, we get the rainbow trout, and pickerel, yeah.
That's
And
my favorite.
And a lot of the fish that I get is line caught, right? So we're not using any nets. People just spend a lot of time getting these things, so we want to treat the product with a little bit of respect. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to work on my cucumber and radish sort of rows that we're making here. So I'm going to use this fancy tool called a mandolin. And what this does, when I was a garde manger, we use this quite a bit because what it does is it just gives you a lot more precise cuts than what your knife will. You can get things a lot more thinner. So I got a cucumber that's just been peeled, and this is from Jill's garden, and I've just halved it. It makes it a bit easier. And then this is on sort of the lowest setting, so that we're gonna get almost ribbons out of the
paper thin.
Yeah, paper thin, like ribbons out of the cucumber. So I just got the cucumber here. And when we're using this, we always want to make sure that we're using sort of our palm. We never have our fingers down in there, because what happens is we end up knocking the tips of our finger off. I've done it myself many times when I was younger. So as you can see, we got some cucumber that's almost see-through. That's how thin it is. Yeah. So I'm gonna get Jill just to slice some more cucumber. And And then we can start doing the, and then we'll do some radish and then start doing the roes. So as you see, we're not using a whole bunch of different spices and stuff like that, because people take time growing these vegetables and produce, right? So we want the natural flavor of the produce to sort of shine in these dishes.
Need much more?
Now we'll start there. So the way I'm going to do the cucumber roes is, we used to do this with butter when I worked at a hotel too. So we just get one of these rolls. We just get one of our thin shavings. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start rolling it up. Actually, I might double do that.
Then you get to do a nice fancy dinner for your friends. This one's got a lot of seasoning.
Yeah, maybe it turned to the side, or the back side. So all I've done is I've rolled it up, and that's going to be sort of the middle of the rows. And then all we do is we start taking these nice shavings that Joel's done. And we start wrapping it around, start getting sort of our petals, our petal shape. So when we were doing this if we were doing this in like a dinner service, we'd have all these sort of done up just a bit ahead of time. So then all we have to do is plate them, because these take a bit of time to do.
Is the radish you want the same size?
Yeah, you can do radish nice and thin too. So once again, all I'm doing is I'm just taking one of the ribbons and I'm just wrapping it around here to start getting sort of our petals. And as we're doing this, we can take sort of a knife or an offset spatula, and we just sort of start fanning out the edges of the rows to make it sort of more rippled of a rose sort of texture. Once again, I'm wrapping this around.
Yellow radish, and I go this year. Just keep it here.
So as you see, as I'm layering it, it's starting to come out a bit more, looking like a rose texture. Joe, if you want to do a couple too. So if you want to do a couple of the petals too. As you see, we're starting to get our nice looking rose here.
Yeah, put the timer on.
It's been like 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. I haven't done this in a long time myself.
I just use our knife to open it up a bit. Until we get the nice size that we want. We want it to be substantial enough on the plate that it looks almost like a little side or a little side salad. We don't want it to be too small that it looks chintzy almost. You know. That'd be a nice portion.
Knife too.
So my rose is ready. So a big part of what I do, I love using like plates that have been made locally by potters and stuff like that. If you ever think like when you're showcasing food, a plate can be almost like a canvas, right? Where you can get different things made, different styles of plates made that go well with your food. So we got two different styles of plates here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer my rose onto the plate. This is going to be a little side. So what we're going to have a rose here, and then a nice piece of fish here, and then we're going to garnish with our vinaigrette. So on my rose here, We've got a whole bunch of greens and stuff from Gilles' garden and the things that I went out and grabbed. So we've got our cucumber flowers, and these all have flavor too, right? So don't be afraid to use these. So we got some of the cucumber flowers. We're just gonna start making things look a bit pretty. We have some of the chive flowers that have come out. These have a real strong onion flavor that'll go nice. So this thing's not gonna be bland though too, right? Like it's gonna have lots of flavor to it.
And would you season it? Could you put
Yeah,
seasoning on it?
I haven't seasoned this yet, but if we wanted to just before service,
Yeah.
we could season this. If we season this a little too early, what happens is the salt starts to suck out the moisture from it, and then the cucumber will bleed all over the plate. So we could season this just before service. If we wanted to, you could add some, like a little dash of oil to this. You could even put a little bit of vinegar on it if you really wanted to.
Is that pretty?
And the food that we're doing is a bit more of a contemporary, I call it progressive Aboriginal style. Because when I first started doing this, I didn't really know what my style of food was. And it took me a long time to figure that out. But my kid's mother actually helped me with that. I was like, oh, I'm thinking about doing Aboriginal food because I was trying to find my way. And she's like, oh, you've already been doing that. Like you're going out and foraging, you're finding these wild foods, you're growing stuff. And there's not really a whole lot of recipes that go back to Aboriginal food.
No, I was wondering about that.
No, there's not a whole.
What do you think used to be the main staple?
Well,
Meat?
yeah. So the research. So I've done a lot of research to figure out sort of what Aboriginal cuisine is, and the way I base my stuff off of is what the Aboriginals were doing around this area. So they were doing a lot of farming back in the day. They were using a lot of fish. They're using a lot of ducks. And then in return, we can still get that stuff in a modern era now, and we can still use those things and showcase these things in our menus now. So that's why I call it a bit more of a progressive style, because it's a bit more modern. So on here, I've just garnished with the cucumber flowers. There's something called wood sorrel that you can find just outgrowing inside of your house, and it has a real tart lemon, like a acidic flavor.
And they look like this. Look like little hearts.
Oh, they almost look like what are those? Clovers, yeah, like the Irish clovers. But
Well, that's what I saw it was growing in my garden. So today I learned something. That stuff I was keep bringing up because I saw it was weed. I can actually use it.
Just a bit more radish, and this is just to make it look even more like petals here.
Alright, so the oven is beeping. It's been 10 minutes. Any question? We have an expert to help you know what you can forage. I know, I learned to forage wild leeks this year and watercress, some type of mushroom called pheasant mushroom that you can find around here. He still hasn't shown me where he gets these morels from though. I don't think he wants to. I remember when people pick mushrooms, people always have like their secret spot and nobody would share with anybody where they find their mushrooms.
No, while I was cooking, I had some food sort of bloggers come up one time, and I took them to, my brother actually showed me this morel spot, and when I took them there and they were taking pictures and stuff like that, he gave me a bunch of crap because I took people to our morel spot. So. Alright, so our fish has been in the oven for the 10 minutes, and it's beautifully cooked. So you can see that it's cooked, like it's nicely cooked because you see the protein is starting to come out of the fish, but it's not overcooked. Most of the time when people are cooking at home, their fish always bleeds out that fat and that protein, and it's more than likely overcooked. This is just cooked. So now the skin comes off pretty nicely. So all I'm gonna do is there's a line almost from the tail that goes down to the fillet there. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a spoon and it starts separating off the skin here. And you can see how we start to get our nice portions here.
That's perfect.
And it comes off the skin quite nicely. I love doing this technique just because it keeps the fish nice and moist when it's on the skin.
I wish you were there so you could try. It's good. We discover new things, exciting. So you're gonna put the fish first or the vinaigrette first?
So normally we would do sort of we put this in a pot and we would do our sauce on the side. So when these dishes come out to the table, we put this in a pot and we would do a bit of a show for customers and we would dress the plate as on the side there. So now I'm going to do a nice portion of fish here. So that'd be, see how we get nice 4 portions almost. I try not to use the tail too much because the tail is a lot thinner than the meat that's up here. So what ends up happening is the tail gets a bit overcooked. So this is a bit of a chef snack for the end of service that we usually do. That's how we usually do it. Yeah.
You want to do 3 plates? Maybe we can all
Chef snack.
Everybody can try.
And then the vinaigrette.
And then I'm just going to add just a tiny bit more of that finishing salt that Jill has on the roes, on the fish.
Is your phone?
Oh, I forgot to add I forgot to add chives to the vinaigrette there.
You can start to see what it starts to look like. Doesn't that look appetizing?
And then this is just a bit of chives that I'm going to add it to the vinaigrette that I forgot. So it's basically a herb vinaigrette that we're making. And this is just finely chopped.
Yum, chef. Anybody's getting hungry?
Yes. I like your chef snacks.
Yeah. I'm gonna stir this.
And then we still have just a bit of arugula left over. We might as well use it instead of wasting it. So a bit of the arugula can go on if we want to. If you find it in the wild, watercress would be nice with this. Has that same peppery sort of flavor. Real nice. And then it's time to dress. So once again, this would come to the side of the table as you're sitting down, and then one of our chefs would come up and they would sauce on the side. So we put just a bit of the vinaigrette on here. You can even use a bit of the vinegar just straight from the vinaigrette into the cucumber. And when you're doing this, make sure you get, like, you want everybody to have a morel, you want everybody to have a fava bean. Okay, bit of vinaigrette on there. Because this is basically our sauce. So I want to make sure we have lots. Joe can dress his plate.
Alright. I'm gonna make sure I get lots of morels, me. never had anything like this. It looks very appetizing, Zach.
Good.
I'm very curious to try. Alright. So we did on 3 different plates. Interesting to see the contrast on a white plate and a black plate. Then I like this one. I think this one is good for this dish.
It is nice and flat.
Doesn't that look amazing? Alright. Well, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. You can put Zach's website on my page, so you can go and check out what he does. When is your next event?
So we do a tasting menu every weekend, and it's in the Durham region at Riverstone Retreat, where we do our 9-course tasting menu. We have an outdoor kitchen, so a lot of things that we do, things have been kissed by the fire. We use a lot of things from our own garden, things we forage, and we showcase that in a tasting menu.
Awesome. So if you're in Ontario, I will advise you to go. It's quite an experience. It's quite a nice dining experience of 9 courses. So I want to thank you again for following me. I'm almost at 1,500, just 19 short 1,500 followers. So please remember to share my page with your friends. And also now you can also find my videos on YouTube. So it make it easier if you want to rewatch some of the videos. So I have a cooking channel too now, which I posted the link on my page also. So thank you again for showing up. Just before we go, we still have we still have a couple minutes. If anyone has any question, you can just go ahead.
Someone said they're gonna go pick up some fresh fish.
Nice.
Everybody says it looks amazing.
No question.
Thank you.
Okay, well that's it for today then. Thank you again for showing up.
Thank you.